More politicians. Further along the road, Daddy and Jeremy James came to a very grand and beautiful palace called the Houses of Parliament. "She must be as rich as the Queen," gasped Jeremy James. "Who?" asked Daddy. "Polly Mint," said Jeremy James. Daddy explained that Polly Mint was where politicians met to tell one another what to do. And Jeremy James wondered why so many people in London were called Polly. They joined a small queue at one of the doors, and Daddy said they were lucky because usually it was a large queue. "I know why we're lucky," said Jeremy James. "Why?" asked Daddy. "Because of a pigeon's number Q," said Jeremy James. "Or number Q," said Daddy. "Well, whatever it is, it's worked because we're going in." At the entrance, a man in uniform was searching people. When it came to Jeremy James's turn, the man looked very seriously at him and asked if he had any guns or bombs. Jeremy James said he hadn't, but he'd like some if the man was giving them away. It turned out the man wasn't giving them away. "In this place," he said to Daddy, "you wouldn't catch anyone giving anything away." Daddy and Jeremy James walked upstairs and along corridors, all of which were lined with statues and pictures, and then they suddenly found themselves on a sort of balcony. The balcony overlooked a very strange room. It was high and rather dark, and on both sides a narrow gangway. There were rows and rows of mainly empty green seats. A man in a funny wig was sitting at the far end of the room, and in the green seats were about 30 people, half of whom seemed to be asleep. Daddy and Jeremy James sat down to watch. "It's the government's fault," cried a thin man on one side of the room. "Oh, no, it's not," shouted a fat man on the other side. "Oh, yes, it is," cried the thin man. "Oh, no, it's not," shouted the fat man. "Order," said the man in the wig. "Order, order." Jeremy James asked Daddy what was happening, and Daddy explained that this was called a debate. The politicians were discussing what the government had done, was doing, or was going to do. One side would say it was all very good, and the other side would say it was all very bad. And at the end of the discussion, the politicians would vote, and the side that said it was all very good would win. They always won because there were more of them than the people who said it was all very bad. "Well, if they know who's going to win," said Jeremy James, "then why do they play?" Daddy said it was all to do with some long word that Jeremy James didn't understand. And Jeremy James thought it was all to do with grown-ups doing silly things like sticking Nelson on a pillar. Meanwhile, the debate continued. "The government," said the thin man, "is ruining the country." "Hear, hear," said a bald man near him. "Nonsense," shouted the fat man. "You'd ruin the country if you were in government." "Hear, hear," said a hairy lady near to him. "No, we wouldn't," said the thin man. "Yes, you would," said the fat man. "Order," said the man in the wig. "Order, order." "And since we are not in government," continued the thin man, "and since all the experts agree that the country is being ruined, and since the government claims that it is not responsible for ruining the country, then may I ask who is?" "The Prime Monster," shouted Jeremy James. All heads turned, and there was loud laughter and applause from the people on the balcony and the people on the thin man's side of the room. Some of the people on the fat man's side of the room woke up and didn't look very pleased, and on the balcony was a man in uniform who didn't look very pleased either. He started walking towards Jeremy James. Daddy, with a rather red face, stood up. "Come on, Jeremy James," he said. "Let's go and see the Queen instead." He took Jeremy James's hand just as the uniformed man arrived, Sorry about that, said Daddy, but we're leaving anyway. Daddy and Jeremy James left the balcony accompanied by the uniformed man and a round of loud applause. Sorry, said Daddy again, when they were out in the corridor. That's all right, sir, whispered the man in uniformed man. Made my day, that has. Jeremy James didn't quite understand why they had to leave so suddenly. And so, as they walked down the stairs and corridors, Daddy explained that people on the balcony weren't allowed to speak in the debate. But the thin man asked who was ruining the country, asked Jeremy James. So I told him. Yeah, I noticed, said Daddy. Actually, I think he already knew. It seemed strange to Jeremy James that somebody should ask a question if he already knew the answer, but that was just another example of the silly things grown-ups did. Grown-ups sometimes even gave you the answer before you'd asked the question, and the answer was usually no. All the same, Jeremy James asked Daddy why the thin man had asked his question if he already knew the answer. It was probably to find out if the fat man knew the answer, said Daddy. And did he? Asked Jeremy James. Well, if he didn't, said Daddy, he certainly does now.